The company held its annual holiday party at one of those sleek, modern hotels downtown, the kind where the walls were lined with mirrors. The chandeliers threw off just enough light to make everything look expensive, and the drinks cost more than a decent meal. I wasn't exactly looking forward to it. I never did. These events were the kind of thing Lisa loved. She called them opportunities. Opportunities to network, to be seen, to move up in the world. She had a knack for working a room, for making people feel like they were the only ones who mattered. Me? I was just there because she asked me to be, because a good husband makes an appearance. So, I showed up, put on the suit she liked, smiled when I needed to, shook hands, made small talk. I had a drink in my hand before I even made it past the entrance, something stiff to keep me sane while I played my role. The usual corporate types were everywhere. Men in tailored suits, trying too hard to impress their bosses. Women in glittering dresses laughing just a little too loud. The clinking of glasses and the hum of conversations filling the air. But even through the noise, even with all the distractions, I noticed Lisa right away. She looked beautiful, as she always did, dressed in a deep blue satin dress that hugged her just right, her hair styled perfectly, makeup done to enhance, not overpower. She knew how to make an entrance. She knew how to command attention without even trying. And she did. But it wasn't the way she looked that made my stomach tighten. It was the way she acted. She was standing near the bar, drink in hand, laughing at something he said. A man, maybe mid-30s, sharp suit, the kind of confidence that came with knowing he was good-looking and well-liked. I recognized him vaguely. I'd seen him before. Some co-worker of hers, someone from her department, but not someone I'd ever had a reason to care about. Until now, Lisa wasn't just talking to him. She was engaged, leaning in just slightly when he spoke, her eyes locked onto his like he was the only person in the room. Her fingers brushed his arm when she laughed. Small, subtle, but intentional. She wasn't just being friendly. I took a sip of my drink, watching, waiting for her to glance around, to notice me standing there. But she didn't. She barely even acknowledged that I existed. I told myself it was nothing. Lisa had always been like this, warm, charming, naturally social. People gravitated toward her. That was just who she was. But still, something gnawed at me, something I couldn't shake. Then I heard it. I hadn't even been eavesdropping, but when you hear your wife's name in a conversation, your ears perk up whether you mean for them to or not. Two of her coworkers stood nearby, drinks in hand, their voices low, but not low enough. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? One of them said, a woman with short blonde hair and a smirk playing on her lips. Yeah, the man beside her replied. She's been spending all her time with him. It's like she's got a new relationship or something. My grip on my glass tightened. The room, the music, the laughter, all of it seemed to fade into the background. A new relationship. I turned my head slightly, just enough to glance at them without making it obvious I was listening. They were talking like it was common knowledge, like they weren't speculating but stating a fact. My stomach twisted, but not with sadness, not with pain. No, what I felt was something else entirely. Something darker. Hatred. I turned my eyes back to Lisa. She was still there, still laughing, still touching his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. She didn't know I was watching. She didn't know that, in the span of a few seconds, everything had changed. I didn't confront her. Not yet. But I would. And when I did, she would have no place to hide. The rest of the night was a blur, but not in the way it should have been. Not in the way where you drink a little too much and forget the details, or where the party fades into a hazy mix of laughter, music, and clinking glasses. No, this was different. Everything was sharp. Every moment etched into my memory, like a scar I knew I'd never get rid of. Lisa never even noticed me watching her. That was the part that got under my skin the most. She was so wrapped up in her conversation, so locked in with that bastard, that I could have walked out of that party and she probably wouldn't have realized until she was ready to leave. I didn't leave, though. I stayed. I watched. I told myself I was just gathering proof, just making sure I wasn't jumping to conclusions. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. The way they stood together, the way her body angled toward his, the way she kept touching her hair, playing with the ends of it absent-mindedly, like she always did when she was interested in someone. It was all there. At some point, She excused herself from their little bubble and made her way toward the bar. That's when I moved. I didn't say anything, not yet. I just walked up beside her, set my empty glass on the counter, and ordered another. She turned, startled, like she hadn't even realized I was there. "Oh," she said, a little too brightly, her eyes wide for just a fraction of a second before she masked it with a smile. "I was wondering where you disappeared to." Disappeared? I'd been there the whole damn time. But I didn't say that. I just looked at her, really looked at her. She was flushed and not from alcohol. Her eyes were still too bright, her posture a little too loose. She was happy, glowing even, and it wasn't because of me. I took a slow sip of my drink, letting the burn slide down my throat. "Having fun?" I asked, my voice even controlled. She nodded. "Yeah, it's been a great night. Everyone's in such a good mood." "Yeah, I bet." I didn't say anything else. Just watched as she took a sip of her own drink, her fingers wrapped delicately around the glass, her nails painted in that deep red she always wore when she wanted to feel powerful. For a split second, she hesitated. Maybe she sensed it, the way I was watching her, the way something in me had shifted. But then, just like that, she brushed it off. "You okay?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. I could have confronted her right then. Could have told her I heard everything, that I saw her, that I wasn't blind or stupid. But I didn't. Not yet. I nodded. "Yeah, just watching." She frowned slightly, then let out a small laugh. "Watching what?" "You." Instead of answering, I just smiled. A tight, forced thing that didn't reach my eyes. "Nothing," I said, finishing off my drink. "Go have fun." Her lips parted slightly, like she wasn't sure what to say. But then, just as quickly, she covered it up. "All right," she said, forcing a lightness into her voice that didn't belong there. She gave my arm a quick squeeze, then turned back toward the party. And just like that, she was gone again. Right back to him. I watched her for another hour, maybe more. Watched the way they moved around each other, the way their conversations never seemed to run out. At one point, he leaned in close and whispered something in her ear. She laughed, but not just any laugh. It was soft, intimate, the kind of laugh a woman gives a man when she wants him to say more. And that was it. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't new. This wasn't some innocent work friendship that just happened to look bad. This was something else, something deeper, something that had been going on long before this party. I didn't need any more proof. I wasn't sad. I wasn't heartbroken. Those emotions were too weak for what I felt. No, I was furious. Not just at her, at him, at all of it. At the fact that she stood there in front of our friends, in front of her colleagues, in front of me, and didn't even try to hide it. Like I was a joke. Like I was nothing. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay still, forcing myself not to cause a scene right then and there. Because it would be a scene. Just not tonight. No, tonight, I would let her enjoy herself. Because the moment we got home, everything was going to change. The night stretched on longer than it should have, but I stayed. Not because I was enjoying myself, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. I needed to see it all, to make sure I wasn't imagining things, to burn every moment into my memory, so that when the time came, when the lies started spilling from Lisa's mouth, I would know the truth. I didn't drink much after that second glass. I needed my head clear. Lisa, on the other hand, didn't have the same restraint. As the party wore on, I watched her grow more comfortable, more at ease, her body language shifting from subtle to obvious. She didn't just talk to him, she gravitated toward him, like he had some kind of pull on her she couldn't resist. She laughed at everything he said, touched his arm without thinking, let him guide her through the crowd like they were the only two people in the room. The worst part? She didn't even try to hide it. I kept my distance, standing near the bar, leaning against a high-top table, pretending to be interested in meaningless conversations with coworkers I barely knew. But my eyes never left her. I wasn't the only one who noticed either. At one point, a man I vaguely recognized from Lisa's department, tall, glasses, the type who probably spent more time behind a desk than socializing, stepped up beside me. He had that look the one people get when they know something but don't want to be the first to say it. He took a sip of his drink, then glanced at me. "Hell of a party," he said. I nodded. Yeah. There was a beat of silence, just long enough to feel intentional. Then, without looking at me. He muttered, "I'd keep an eye on your wife if I were you." My jaw clenched. Not because I needed his advice. I didn't. I already knew. But because it confirmed what I had been trying to deny. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He let out a small sigh, shook his head, and walked away. I waited another 30 minutes, maybe more. Just long enough to let her enjoy herself. Let her think I was just another oblivious husband tagging along, keeping up appearances while she did whatever the hell she wanted. Then, when I was sure I'd seen enough, I walked up behind her and placed a hand on her lower back. She flinched. Not much, but enough. I leaned in close. "It's getting late," I said, my voice calm. Too calm. "We should head home." For the first time all night, she looked guilty. Not because she had done anything, at least not tonight, but because she knew I had been watching. She smiled quickly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, yeah, of course. Let me just say goodbye to a few people." She turned to her co-worker, him, and gave him a look. Something unspoken passed between them, something I caught, but didn't fully understand. Yet, then she smiled again, touched his arm one last time, and walked away. That final touch, that was what sealed it. I didn't say a word as we left the hotel. Lisa chattered the whole way down to the valet stand, filling the silence with meaningless conversation, talking about who she saw, what people were wearing, how nice the venue was. She was nervous. She could feel it, the shift, the weight in the air between us. I let her talk, let her keep up the illusion. When the car pulled up, I opened the door for her, let her slide into the passenger seat, then shut it behind her. I walked around, got in, started the engine. And then? I said nothing. The silence stretched. The first few minutes of the drive were filled with nothing but the sound of the tires against the pavement, the faint hum of the radio playing some soft, forgettable song. Lisa shifted in her seat. She wasn't used to this. Normally, I'd ask about the party, we'd talk about who was there, who said what, the usual. But I wasn't in the mood for small talk. Finally, she cleared her throat. "Did you have a good time?" she asked, her voice light, casual like nothing had happened. I let the question sit in the air for a few beats before answering. It was interesting. That was all I gave her. She let out a small laugh, but it was forced. Yeah, it was. I think this was one of the best ones they've had in a while. Everyone seemed so relaxed, you know? I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. Relaxed. Yeah, she sure as hell looked relaxed when she was practically draping herself over her coworker. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye. She was staring out the window, fingers tapping idly against her thigh. She knew. She didn't know how much I knew, but she could feel it. The thing about Lisa was she was good at hiding things. Always had been. Even before this, she had a way of twisting situations, making them seem smaller, less important than they really were. But I wasn't stupid, and I sure as hell wasn't blind. A red light stopped us, and for the first time since we got in the car, I turned my head to look at her fully. She must have felt it, because she finally turned to meet my gaze. "What?" she asked, smiling, but there was a tightness around her eyes. I studied her, let the moment stretch, let the silence press against her. Then I smirked. "Nothing," I said, turning back to the road as the light changed. "Just watching." Her breath caught for just a fraction of a second. Then she let out a small, nervous laugh, shifting in her seat again. But she didn't ask anything else. She knew better. The rest of the drive was quiet. Not the comfortable kind of quiet, not the kind where two people are at peace in each other's presence. No, this was something else entirely. This was the quiet before storm. And Lisa? She had no idea just how bad that storm was about to be. The drive home stretched on longer than it should have, but not because of traffic. The roads were clear, the city quiet, the world outside moving at its usual pace. But inside that car, between Lisa and me, time felt different. Stretched thin, pulled tight, like a rope about to snap. She was restless, shifting in her seat every few minutes, crossing and uncrossing her legs, tapping her fingers against her arm. She kept sneaking glances at me, like she was waiting for something, for me to say something, for me to break the silence. But I didn't. I just kept driving. The tension between us was thick enough to choke on. But Lisa, being who she was, tried to smooth it over. She had always been good at that. at pretending things were fine, at filling the space with meaningless chatter to keep people from noticing the cracks beneath the surface. "So," she said after a while, forcing a casual tone, "what did you think of the party?" I let the question hang in the air for a moment, long enough for her to feel the weight of it. Then I shrugged. It was interesting. I didn't look at her, but I could feel her watching me, searching my face for some clue, some sign of what I was thinking. "Yeah," she said, nodding quickly. "I thought so too. It was nice, wasn't it? Just really relaxed. Everyone seemed to be in a good mood. Relaxed. Good mood." I let out a slow breath through my nose, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. "Yeah," I said, my voice even. "Everyone seemed to be having a great time." Lisa hesitated, then let out a small laugh. "You sound weird. Did something happen?" I turned my head slightly, just enough to glance at her out of the corner of my eye. She was trying to sound playful, but there was an edge to her voice, a slight tightness around her mouth. She was fishing. She didn't know how much I knew, but she could feel it. I smirked, just enough for her to see. "Nothing happened," I said smoothly. "I was just watching." Her breath hitched, just a small, almost imperceptible sound, but I caught it. I turned back to the road, letting her sit with that. The rest of the drive was quiet, but not the comfortable kind of quiet. It was the kind of silence that pressed down, heavy and suffocating. Lisa didn't try to fill it this time. She just stared out the window, arms crossed over her stomach, her posture stiff. When we finally pulled into the driveway, she reached for the door handle almost immediately, like she couldn't get out of the car fast enough. But I wasn't done with her. I let her step out first, then took my time, closing my door a little slower than necessary, making her feel my presence behind her as she walked up to the front door. She fumbled with her keys for a second before unlocking it and stepping inside. I followed, shutting the door behind me with a little more force than needed. Lisa kicked off her heels, letting out a soft sigh, like she was relieved to finally be home. She stretched her arms, rolling her shoulders, then turned to face me with a bright, easy smile. Too easy. "Well," she said, running a hand through her hair. "That was fun, wasn't it?" I tilted my head slightly, watching her. Was it? Something flickered in her expression. It was quick, barely there, but I saw it. She laughed, but it was forced. I mean, yeah, it's always nice seeing everyone outside of work. Letting loose a little. I stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "You certainly seem to be enjoying yourself." She blinked, her smile faltering just slightly before she forced it back into place. "Of course. I mean, isn't that the point of these things?" I didn't answer, just let my eyes linger on her, studying her, letting the silence stretch until I saw her fingers twitch at her side. Then, finally, I said, "You were pretty close with that guy tonight." Her body tensed, just for a second, just long enough for me to notice. Then she let out another forced laugh, shaking her head. "Oh, come on. You're not jealous, are you?" I didn't blink. She sighed, rolling her eyes. "That's ridiculous." I stepped even closer, lowering my voice just slightly. "Is it?" Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. That was the moment she knew. She knew I wasn't just making small talk, wasn't just poking fun. I wasn't teasing. I wasn't playing. I knew. And for the first time tonight, Lisa looked nervous. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, crossing her arms like she was trying to shield herself from something. "He's just a co-worker," she said quickly, too quickly. "We were just talking." "Just talking," I echoed. She nodded. "Yes. Come on, you know me. You know how I am. I'm friendly with everyone." I tilted my head. "Friendly." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Yes." I took another step closer. "Tell me," I said slowly, "do you always touch your coworkers like that?" Her breath caught again. Another tiny, nearly invisible reaction. But I caught it. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the calculations, the split-second decisions. Lisa was quick, always had been. She was used to being in control of situations, of people. She knew how to twist things, how to redirect, how to smooth things over before they ever turn into problems. But this time, she was slipping. I could see it in the way she licked her lips, in the way she shifted again, in the way her fingers twitched like she wanted to reach for something, maybe another drink, maybe something to hold on to. "I don't know what you're trying to say," she said finally, her voice quieter now. I smiled, slow and sharp. I think you do. Silence. For the first time, she didn't have a response. For the first time, Lisa was standing in front of me, searching for words and coming up empty. And I wasn't going to let her escape. Not this time. Lisa had always been a fast talker. It was one of the things that made her so damn good at her job. Her ability to twist words, to spin stories, to make people see things the way she wanted them to. It used to impress me. It used to make me proud. Now it made me sick. She stood there in the dim light of our entryway, still in that deep blue dress. Her hair still perfectly styled from the party, her makeup flawless. But for the first time in years, she didn't look put together. She looked trapped. She was trying to keep her composure, trying to play this off like it was nothing, like I was the one overreacting. But I could see the cracks forming. I had pushed her off script. I don't know what you're getting at, she said, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. But this is ridiculous. You're acting like I did something wrong, and I didn't. I took my time unbuttoning my jacket, rolling my shoulders like I was getting comfortable. I wanted her to feel the weight of this, the weight of what I knew, the weight of me finally seeing her for what she was. I smirked. Didn't you? She let out a frustrated breath, running a hand through her hair. Jesus, you're really not going to drop this, are you? Why would I? She laughed, sharp, forced. Because there's nothing to drop. I had a conversation with a coworker at a party. That's it. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I tilted my head, watching her like a puzzle I had finally figured out. Funny, I said. That's not what your coworkers think. That landed. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, wide and full of something she was trying desperately to hide. Excuse me. I shrugged, my voice casual. I overheard a couple of them talking, saying how obvious it was, how you've got a new relationship. She blanched. For 1 second, I saw the real Lisa, the one who wasn't in control, the one who wasn't 2 steps ahead of everyone else, the one who had just realized she'd been caught. But then just as quickly, she snapped back. She scoffed, rolling her eyes like I had just told her the sky was green. Oh, come on. You actually believe that gossip? That's all it is. Office gossip. People love to talk, you know that. Right. I nodded slowly, stepping closer. And tell me, why would they think you're in a new relationship? She opened her mouth, then closed it. I gave her a moment, let her come up with whatever excuse she was about to throw my way. I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear her try and wriggle out of this, to watch her fail. Lisa let out a sharp breath. Because people love drama, that's why. You know how it is. Someone sees 2 co-workers talking, and suddenly they're having an affair. I arched an eyebrow. That's all you were doing? Talking. Yes. She said it too quickly, too forcefully. I laughed, shaking my head. She was a liar, but she wasn't a good one under pressure. Lisa squared her shoulders, lifting her chin like she was daring me to accuse her of something worse. You're seriously standing here, trying to make me feel guilty for having a friendly conversation? Oh, it was friendly, all right, I said. Real friendly. Must be why you were touching him all night. Leaning in, laughing at everything he said like he was the funniest guy on the planet. Her nostrils flared. I was being polite. Polite. I let out a humorless chuckle. That's what we're calling it now. She threw her hands in the air. Jesus, I can't believe this. You're making assumptions based on nothing. I was talking to a coworker at a work event. That's it. I stared at her for a long moment, my blood boiling, my fists itching to hit something. Anything just to release this feeling crawling under my skin. But I wouldn't lose my temper. Not yet. Instead, I took a step closer, watching as she instinctively stepped back. You know what's funny? I said, my voice softer now, more dangerous. You're trying so hard to make me think I'm crazy. I'm imagining things. But you want to know something, Lisa? She swallowed hard but said nothing. I leaned in just slightly, lowering my voice like I was telling her a secret. You never once asked me which co-workers I overheard. Her face went pale. For 1 second, everything on her face, the confidence, the defiance, the act, shattered. She knew what that meant. She knew that if I had overheard specific people talking, that meant there was more to this. That meant people had noticed before tonight. That meant I wasn't the only one who saw it. Lisa's lips parted, but no words came out. I watched her scramble. Watch her dig through that manipulative little brain of hers, searching for the right words, the right lie. But she was too slow, because I wasn't waiting for an excuse. I was done waiting. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. You know what? Forget it. Her eyes widened. Wait. I turned, walking past her, heading for the bedroom. Where are you going? She called after me. I didn't answer. I just kept walking. I heard her follow me, her footsteps quick, desperate. Babe, come on. This is stupid. I pushed open the bedroom door, stepping inside, then turned to face her. She was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes pleading now instead of defensive. She knew she had lost. I held her gaze for a long moment, letting the silence press down on her, watching as she squirmed under it. Then, finally I spoke. Who is he? Lisa flinched like I had struck her. And in that moment, I knew. I didn't need her to answer. I already had it. Lisa stood in the doorway like a deer caught in headlights, her lips slightly parted, her breathing uneven. For the first time in our marriage, she looked genuinely afraid, not for her safety, but for what was coming next. Who is he? I repeated, my voice lower now, controlled. She swallowed hard, her throat bobbing as she clutched her arms tighter around herself like she was trying to physically hold herself together. She hesitated, licked her lips, then forced out a shaky laugh. I don't know what you want me to say. Wrong answer. I exhaled slowly, running a hand down my face, forcing myself to stay calm. I couldn't let my anger take over. Not yet. I needed to corner her, make her say it, make her admit it. I stepped forward. She stepped back. That was all the confirmation I needed. You do know, I said, tilting my head slightly, watching her squirm. You just don't want to say it out loud. She let out another laugh, nervous this time, strained. God, you're being so dramatic. There's no one, okay? You're twisting things into something they're not. I smirked, but there was no humor in it. Yeah? Then say his name. She blinked. What? Say his name. I repeated, my voice sharp now, cutting through the air like a blade. If he's just a co-worker, if this is all in my head, then saying his name shouldn't be a problem, right? She opened her mouth, then closed it. My smirk widened. Lisa never hesitated. She was quick, always had a response, always knew how to flip a situation in her favor. But now, she was hesitating, because names have weight. And if she said his name out loud, that meant she was acknowledging him, acknowledging us, acknowledging what she had done. I could see her thoughts racing behind her eyes, see the desperate attempt to salvage the situation before it spiraled completely out of control. But she was too late. I took another step forward, forcing her to meet my gaze. Who is he? Lisa's lips trembled, her breath hitching. Then, finally, she whispered, Ethan. I laughed. A slow, humorless sound that sent a visible shudder down her spine. Ethan. I should have known. I didn't know. Ethan, the golden boy at her office. The one everyone liked, the one always flashing that arrogant smirk, always making people laugh. The one who never quite looked me in the eye whenever I stopped by to pick Lisa up from work. The one she had been glued to all night. She must have thought that giving me a name would somehow lessen the impact, that it would make this easier. Like once the unknown became known, I'd somehow calm down. She was wrong. Now that I had a name, I had a target. Lisa took a small step forward, reaching for me, her fingers barely grazing my arm before I yanked away like her touch burned. Baby, listen, she started, her voice soft, pleading. It's not what you think. I swear. I laughed again, shaking my head. You swear. I cut her off, finally letting some of the anger seep into my tone. Lisa, don't insult me. She flinched. Good. I took a step back, putting more space between us. I needed air, needed to breathe, needed to not be near her. She let out a shaky breath. Okay, she said, nodding like she was trying to convince herself of something. I know you're upset. I get it. But can you let me explain? I crossed my arms. Oh, this should be good. She licked her lips, glancing at the floor before looking back up at me with wide, glassy eyes. The same look she used whenever she wanted to get out of trouble. The same look that had worked so many times before. But not this time. Not this time. She swallowed. We were just talking. That's all it was. Yes, I got close to him at the party, but nothing happened. I swear to you. You're. She hesitated, then forced out a weak laugh. You're acting like I slept with him or something. I clenched my jaw, so tight it ached. Lisa saw it, saw the way my whole body tensed, and immediately backtracked. I didn't mean it like that, she rushed out, holding her hands up. I don't know why you're getting so angry. I was talking to someone. That's not a crime. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I shook my head, letting out another humorless laugh. You still think I'm an idiot, I muttered, more to myself than to her. She blinked. What? I lifted my gaze, meeting hers dead on. You still think I'm some clueless, naive husband who doesn't see what's right in front of him. That's not what I... Shut up. Her mouth snapped closed. I stepped forward again, forcing her to really look at me. You think I don't see it? You think I don't see how you look at him? How you talk to him? How you act around him? She shook her head, lips parted like she was going to deny it, but no words came out. Because she knew. She knew that I knew. I see you, I said, my voice quieter now, steadier. And I see him. I see what's been happening right under my nose. Lisa let out a shaky breath, her hands falling to her sides. Nothing happened, she whispered. I laughed again, stepping back. Not yet, huh? She winced. I turned away, running a hand through my hair, trying to keep my rage from boiling over. But the worst part? She wasn't even begging. She wasn't breaking down, wasn't crying, wasn't dropping to her knees, swearing that she loved me, that she made a mistake, that she'd do anything to fix this. No, she was still trying to minimize it. She was still playing games. And that made me hate her even more. I let out a long breath, shaking my head. You know what, Lisa? She swallowed hard. What? I turned back to face her, eyes cold, voice steady. I hope he was worth it. Her face crumpled for the first time. Good. Lisa stood there, frozen, her lips slightly parted like she was about to say something, but nothing came. No defense. No excuses. No desperate last-ditch effort to rewrite the truth into something more comfortable. Just silence. For the first time in our marriage, she didn't know what to say. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt like I'd won something. But there was no victory in this. There was just a heavy, suffocating weight pressing down on my chest, a slow-burning rage sitting under my skin, a quiet voice in my head whispering, "She never even tried to fight for you." I exhaled long and slow, forcing my hands to unclench, forcing my breathing to even out. Lisa took a small step forward, hesitant. I held up a hand. Don't. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Her arms dropped to her sides, her perfectly manicured fingers twitching slightly, like she wanted to reach for me, like she wanted to do something, but she didn't. Because deep down, she knew. She knew this wasn't something she could talk her way out of. She knew that the moment I heard his name, something in me had shifted. She knew that no matter what excuse she gave, no matter how many ways she twisted the truth, no matter how much she tried to downplay it, I wasn't the same man I was yesterday. And I never would be again. I turned, walking toward the closet, grabbing an overnight bag and tossing it onto the bed. Lisa's eyes widened. Wait, what are you doing? I ignored her, opening drawers, grabbing clothes, shoving them into the bag. Babe, come on. Her voice rose slightly. Panic finally started to seep in. She stepped closer, her hands reaching out, barely brushing my arm before I yanked away like I couldn't stand the feel of her touch. She blinked rapidly, as if she hadn't expected that, as if she had somehow convinced herself that, even now, I wouldn't pull away. I zipped the bag shut, slinging it over my shoulder before finally turning to face her. Her breath hitched at whatever she saw in my expression. Where are you going? She asked, voice tight. I exhaled slowly. Anywhere but here. Her mouth opened and closed, her throat bobbing as she swallowed. You're seriously leaving? I let out a low, humorless laugh. Oh, now you care? Her eyes flashed with something. Anger, maybe, or desperation, or something she hadn't quite figured out how to process yet. Of course I care, she snapped. I don't want you to go. I smirked. That's funny. You didn't seem to mind when you were throwing yourself at Ethan. She flinched, her hands balling into fists at her sides. I wasn't. Don't. My voice came out low, sharp. Don't stand there and insult me by pretending it wasn't what it was. Her lips trembled. I shook my head, exhaling through my nose. You know the worst part? I asked, voice eerily calm. She didn't answer. I laughed bitterly, adjusting the strap of my bag. It's not that you cheated. It's not even that you lied. Lisa swallowed, staring at me like she didn't want to hear what was coming next. It's that you didn't even try to hide it. Her eyes went wide. I nodded slowly, stepping closer, lowering my voice. You let them see it. Your coworkers. Your friends. Me. She shook her head rapidly. No, it wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No pity. No sympathy. No urge to comfort her. She wasn't crying because she was sorry. She was crying because she'd been caught. I stepped past her, heading for the door. Lisa spun around. Wait. Can we just talk about this? I turned, meeting her gaze one last time. What's there to talk about? I asked flatly. She took a shaky breath. I shook my head. Lisa, you made your choice. She blinked rapidly. What does that mean? I smirked. It means you can have Ethan now. Her face crumpled. No, I don't want. I arched an eyebrow. You don't want him? She hesitated. Too long. I laughed again, shaking my head. That's what I thought. I turned back toward the door, gripping the handle. Lisa's voice wavered behind me. Are you coming back? I stilled, my fingers tightening around the metal. Then, without looking back, I muttered, I don't think so. And just like that, I walked out. I didn't slam the door, didn't yell, didn't look over my shoulder. I just left. And as I stepped out into the night, the cold air hitting my face, my lungs filling with something that almost felt like relief, I realized something. The house behind me, the life behind me, it wasn't mine anymore. And I was okay with that.